Most people think they're broke because they don't budget. The real problem is that they're budgeting wrong. Some of the most popular financial advice online is quietly doing the opposite of what it promises, keeping people stuck, stressed, and living paycheck to paycheck even on decent incomes. The mistakes aren't obvious. That's what makes them so damaging. And the longer they go unexamined, the more expensive they become, not just in dollars, but in years. The first mistake looks like progress. You download an app, build a spreadsheet, sort everything into categories, food, transport, changes. That's the illusion of control. Awareness without action is just entertainment. Budgeting tools make you feel in control without forcing any actual behavior change. It's like weighing yourself every day while changing nothing about how you eat. The number becomes familiar, comfortable even, and comfort is the enemy of change. The fix isn't more tracking, it's building systems that make the right behavior automatic. Instead of reviewing what you spent, design your accounts so the money moves before you can touch it. Create a separate account for fixed expenses, another for discretionary spending. When the discretionary account is empty, spending stops, not because you willed yourself to stop, but because the structure made it impossible to continue. Constraints beat willpower every single time. Willpower is a resource that depletes. Structure doesn't. The second mistake is just as common and just as quietly destructive. Most people save whatever's left after spending. That means savings are optional, and optional things don't happen consistently. Life is extraordinarily good at filling financial space. A dinner out, a parking ticket, a spontaneous purchase, the month ends and there's nothing left to save. It doesn't feel like a failure each time, it just feels like life. And that's the trap. The people who actually build wealth reverse the order entirely. Income comes in, savings move first, then the rest gets spent. They pay themselves before life gets a chance to do it for them. This isn't about discipline, it's about sequence. If you don't decide where your money goes first, your lifestyle will make that decision for you, and it will always choose comfort over the future. The solution is simple, but requires a one-time decision. Automate a transfer on payday. Even if it starts at $50 a month, the habit of paying yourself first rewires how you relate to money. Over time, you increase the amount. The automation does the heavy lifting. You barely notice it leaving. Then there's the micro-cutting myth. Skipping the daily coffee, canceling one subscription, clipping coupons. None of that is the problem. Nobody stays broke over $5. People stay broke because of a car that costs $1,000 a month to own, an apartment that stretches them thin every single month without fail, and lifestyle upgrades that stack quietly over time until the weight becomes impossible to shift. Obsessing over small expenses while ignoring large fixed costs is like trying to drain a pool with a spoon while the tap is still running. You feel productive, nothing actually changes. The solution here is to audit your three biggest monthly commitments: housing, transportation, and debt. These three categories alone typically consume 60 to 70% of a person's take-home pay. If any one of them is outsized, no amount of coffee skipping will compensate. Housing should generally sit below 30% of income. If it doesn't, the real financial work isn't budgeting tighter, it's restructuring the big number. That might mean taking on a roommate, relocating, or aggressively paying down high-interest debt before addressing anything else. It's uncomfortable to confront. It's more uncomfortable to keep pretending the small cuts will be enough. Lifestyle inflation is what kills most financial progress silently. A raise comes in, income goes up, and so does the apartment, the car, the wardrobe, the weekends away. Each individual upgrade feels earned, justified, and separately, maybe they are. But together, they cancel out every financial gain and reset the baseline higher. Suddenly, nothing feels different. You're earning more and feeling exactly the same, sometimes worse, because the expectations that come with a higher income bring their own pressure. That's because wealth isn't built on income, it's built on the gap between what you earn and what you spend. No gap, no freedom. It doesn't matter what the number is. A person earning $40,000 a year who consistently saves 15% will outpace someone earning $100,000 who saves nothing, given enough time. The math is ruthless and patient. The antidote to lifestyle inflation is what some call a lifestyle freeze.
Every time income increases, the raise gets redirected, automatically, immediately, before it ever touches the spending account. Half to savings or investments, half to spending if needed. The key is that the lifestyle doesn't expand at the same rate as the income. Over several years, the gap compounds. That gap becomes investments. Investments become options. Options become freedom. One mistake almost nobody talks about is budgeting only for the price and ignoring the total cost of ownership. You look at something and think you can afford it, but you're only seeing the first cost, not the maintenance, not the upgrades, not the subscriptions that come bundled with it, the time it demands, or the space it occupies physically and mentally. A $60,000 car isn't a purchase. It's insurance, registration, fuel, maintenance, and depreciation wrapped in something that feels like a reward. It's a monthly expense wearing the costume of an asset.
This extends far beyond cars. A large home means more to heat, furnish, clean, and maintain. A cheap piece of equipment that rarely gets used costs more per use than an expensive one that gets used daily. Every purchase carries a shadow cost, and if your budget doesn't account for it, your money will keep disappearing without explanation. The solution is to build in a delay before any significant purchase, a standard waiting period, typically 30 days for anything over a set threshold. During that window, research the real ongoing cost. Add it up, then decide. Most impulse purchases don't survive honest math and 30 days of patience. Then there's the perfection trap, the perfectly categorized budget with precise allocations and airtight discipline, until one unexpected expense hits and the whole system collapses. A car repair, a medical bill, a last-minute flight. Something always comes up, and a budget built on perfect conditions will fail the moment reality arrives. Real life isn't perfect, and a system that depends on perfection will fail consistently and expensively. The solution is to build imperfection into the budget deliberately. This means two things. First, an emergency fund. Not a goal, but a non-negotiable foundation. 3 to 6 months of essential expenses held in a separate account that exists for one purpose only. Without it, every unexpected cost becomes debt, and debt is what makes the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle so hard to escape. Second, a miscellaneous category with real money in it every month. Not a tight category with no room, but an honest one that acknowledges life is unpredictable. When the miscellaneous money runs out, discretionary spending stops. When it doesn't get used, it rolls into savings. This approach doesn't require perfection. It just requires honesty. There is also the problem of budgeting in isolation. Most people treat their budget as a private document, something to manage alone, quietly, with a low-grade sense of shame attached to it. But financial behavior doesn't happen in isolation. It happens at restaurants, in conversations, in the subtle social pressure to match the spending patterns of the people around you. Peer spending is one of the most underestimated forces in personal finance. If your social environment normalizes expensive habits, your budget will fight that current every single month. The solution isn't to become a recluse, it's to become intentional about financial community. Seek out people who talk openly about money, who share similar goals, who aren't embarrassed to suggest a cheaper option. Read about people who built wealth slowly and unglamorously. Let that become the reference point instead of social media, which is almost exclusively a highlight reel of consumption. Environment shapes behavior more reliably than motivation does. Another overlooked mistake is treating a budget as a static document. Most people build a budget once or update it reactively when something breaks and otherwise leave it unchanged. But life changes constantly. Income shifts, expenses evolve, priorities move. A budget that made sense 2 years ago may be completely misaligned with where you actually are now. A static budget becomes background noise, then gets ignored entirely. The fix is a monthly review that takes no more than 20 minutes. Not a deep audit, just a reset. Look at what came in, what went out, and whether those numbers still reflect your actual priorities. Then make one small adjustment. 1. Over 12 months, those 12 adjustments compound into a financial system that actually fits your life rather than some earlier version of it. Finally, there's the mistake of treating the budget as the destination rather than the vehicle.
A budget is not the goal, it's the infrastructure that makes the goal possible. Without a clear reason for the discipline, a specific vision of what financial freedom actually looks like for you, the budget becomes its own source of stress, something to endure rather than use, and eventually something to abandon. The most effective thing a person can do alongside any budget is define what they're building toward. Not a vague sense of security, but something concrete. A paid-off home by a certain age, the ability to stop working on someone else's schedule, a cushion large enough to take a risk on something meaningful. When the goal is clear, the budget becomes purposeful. The sacrifice has a name. That changes everything about how it feels to maintain. What actually works is almost boring in its simplicity. Automate savings before you have a chance to spend. Focus your energy on the big recurring costs, housing, transportation, debt, and fix them at the structural level rather than managing them month to month. Use friction against impulse spending. Slow the decision down. Remove the easy triggers. Give time a chance to do the filtering. Build an emergency fund before anything else, because without it, every unexpected cost becomes a setback that undoes months of progress. Review the budget monthly and adjust it to match reality rather than an ideal. Define the goal clearly enough that the work has meaning. Budgeting was never really about restriction. It's about control over your time, your stress, your choices, your future. The people who get it right aren't necessarily earning more than everyone else. They're just spending deliberately instead of reactively. They've stopped letting the default, the path of least resistance, the lifestyle everyone around them is living, make their financial decisions for them. Money is a tool, precise, patient, and completely indifferent to whether you use it well or poorly. Use it deliberately and it works for you, quietly, compounding in the background while you live your life. Ignore that, and just as quietly, it starts working against you instead. The difference isn't intelligence, it isn't income, it's whether you decided to be intentional before the month started or whether you're explaining what happened after it ended. Hit subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment telling me which lesson are you learning from this. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.